Virginia Smith is here with us, speaking about changing awareness and changing thinking. Virginia is alumna of INTAC. She's a graduate from OCAD University. Is a visual artist, and she has an interest in environmental and location-based projects, both in terms of sort of site-specific sculpture, and now very much involved with environmental action. And while she was at OCAD, she was in INTAC and was a sort of a leader on a number of sort of digital and video works with partners around the world. Her experiences in INTAC are highlighted through an interview in the recent INTAC book, where she talks about the experience. And the project she's presenting today, AcClimatize, is a board game that she's developed to build awareness of the complexities and opportunities of addressing climate change. And I'm really happy that she's with us today. So welcome, Virginia.
Thank you. Yeah, I was in the program in 2017, so not so long ago. And I think COVID kind of changed everything. And I decided to do my master's in sustainable design through the Minneapolis School of Art and Design. And I think because I was in the INTAC program, I was used to, doing things online and doing things virtually. This was my thesis project. So they wanted us to come up with something that we thought could really change, like a whole group of people, not just like a small amount, but like a whole, like think really big. And so there was two kind of things that I thought people really didn't know about. One was that we signed the Paris Accord to reduce our carbon emissions from our 2005 by 40%. I don't think people knew that 196 countries signed the Paris Accord. So that idea came up like, okay, carbon emissions. And then the other thing was that did people know about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a path forward? I know they were, I think they were whatever initiated in 1989 or something like this, a long time ago. But did people know about it? And in education here in Canada, it is being implemented in the grade 5 curriculum, but that only started 2 years ago. Okay, so those were kind of the parameters I started with, and then we're going to watch the video, which is just 1 minute. I don't know if people have watched it, but I thought I would just start with that.
AcClimatize explores your human journey of navigating this world of sustainability to help save the Earth for future generations, rejecting the old and reclaiming empowerment. You compete to stave off carbon emissions using carbon positive points to buy all 17 sustainability superpower cards to help champion your new life. Search and collect the most effective cards to provide immunity to any disasters that may threaten your journey. Roll the die and move around the board counterclockwise. Pick up points when landing on the house, workplace, school, recreation, and community spaces by drawing and reading aloud the designated cards. Draw a food card when you land or pass a meal space. Mark your points on the carbon scorecard. With 2 positive points, you can purchase a sustainability superpower card. Collect all 17 to end the game. This game requires some sleuthing, collaborating, and learning, making it fun for the whole family, bringing families together.
Can I close that? Okay. There we go. So when I did the project, it was a minimum viable product when I did it for my thesis. So that means it was all black and white. There wasn't any details. This is the work that I've done since January, since I graduated. And it's changed quite a bit. So the average family, I wanted to work with families because I thought that young kids could influence their parents' decision-making process and vice versa. And so this is the game board. The center portion is where you move around the game. There's carbon scorecards, and then there's the sustainability superpower scorecard each player. So there's 4 players, roughly. The average family is 4 people. Um, the game, so there's 4 decks of cards: house, food, recreation, or workplace. The original had like 65 cards. I whittled it down to the 40 best ideas when I thought I would produce it as an actual game and have it printed. Again, there's these 25 community cards that everybody plays, and then 64 sustainable superpower cards, which is relating to the United Nations SDGs. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as we go along. So my main focus was this, the framework, the SDG framework of 4.7, which was education, because that's what, kind of could fill the best bucket of, the amount of people. And what I focused on was this education on sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and cultural contribution to sustainable development. So for my thesis, we had to have a framework. This is the framework that I chose. I wanted to empower families to know that they could reduce their carbon footprint, because in the last 20 years, we've kind of looked to industry and other places and governments to reduce carbon footprints. But I wanted to empower families to say that, their lifestyle choices could also make a difference. And so with the cards, we give positive points for good carbon choices and negative points for less than desirable carbon choices. The cards ideas are in bite-sized ideas, but it also includes the thought process for the statements. This really doesn't matter, but I did allocate the cards and the different sustainable development goals. So all the goals are included in the game. I've put a sample of, oh, can I move this? Yeah, I can. Oh, maybe. I put a sample of, the top row is food choices. The bottom row are house choices. So you can see that there's a point system from -3 to +3. Well, I didn't, but that's the point system. A -2 point for a food card is you're eating more plant-based protein, reducing the likelihood of diabetes and the connected healthcare costs. So it's not really just about carbon. It includes all kind of other ideas. And in a way, like kids aren't going to really care about that. Oh, okay, they're not thinking about their health in the future, but parents might be. And also it's like little seeds. So you can remember, you're planted the seed when you're a kid, and then you grow up and you go, oh yeah, I remember I heard about that. So another one, you consider yourself a flexitarian, mainly a vegetarian, but occasionally eat meat or fish. You're 13% of the population. And for that, you get a 1+ point. And so the idea that, sustainability isn't really strict. It's a process where we can, make our own decisions and we can move forward. We can be 13% of the population, or we could be, we could participate in that. And then this other one, you give you gave to the food bank money or grown produce, so it's not just monetary, reducing poverty and supporting vulnerable people. Again, it's not just about food, it's about why we're doing it and how we can help. So, empowering people to actually go out and do something and giving them the reason why. When I was designing these cards, I didn't know much about printing or anything, zero about printing. But what I found out was that I was using originally black ink, and black ink has carbon in it. Who would have thought? Okay, that makes sense. So I changed all the lettering to be colored ink. Um, so none of the lettering and most of the designs do not include any black ink. Um, but I did include, this was originally these cards, the negative cards were originally using black ink, of course. And then I just reduced it because I felt that that was important for that, for it to be in gray. Um, a minus idea is your livestock uses 18% more water than plant-based protein, reducing the amount of fresh water available for human consumption. And again, that's in Canada, we've always thought that there's plenty of water to go around. We don't have to worry about that. But now we're realizing that, yes, we do have to worry about that. This top row is recreation, and the bottom row is samples of the workplace and the school cards. I'll just talk to a few of the, the school cards. Your school encourages all girls in political science education, supporting leadership equality. So what they found out was that if you educate girls, they'll have fewer children and the population is increasing. So let's educate them. But also we should be equal. So here our school teaches about planetary boundaries, that we do not have an unlimited quantity of resources, freshwater, minerals, and land. We need to protect them. +1. And then here is students from your school get together to plant and maintain a native pollinator garden to increase at-risk insect populations like monarch butterflies. So the empowering of the students for students to go ahead and plant these gardens, but also why, because, a lot of people don't like insects. People my age don't like insects, but, it's kind of ridiculous. We have to change our ways and realize that, what we're doing may be harming things. So if students, they get a +2 for that. This is the community cards, and I'll just talk to 3 of these cards. You would like to move your family to a low carbon emitting country. Which do you pick? The world average is 6.8 tons per person, and that was a 2022 figure. And then people think that Canada doesn't produce a lot of carbon. And when you go to the answer, which is on the back, we find out, that actually we produce a lot of carbon per person. So often what we hear is by country. And so by country, we don't produce a lot, but individually, when we're accountable individually, yes, we produce a lot. So it's just really about discovery. This other one is our community plans. Our community plans using the Project Drawdown tool to reduce carbon and climate change, which provides the greatest benefits. So you choose which provides the greatest benefits, but we're all going to get positive because we know Project Drawdown is a tool that is used to advise governments and, all humans on how to move forward to be more sustainable. This was an interesting thing, which I didn't know before, was this global footprint network. They put together a country's deficit day, the day each country used as much nature as its country could generate in 1 year. Choose the best scenario. And there's the answers at the bottom. I have a few of these different cards because, there's a bunch of countries. So some are positive and some are negative. But that makes you think in a different way as to about sustainability and about climate change and about our carbon footprint or, how we can make a difference. So on the left are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And for the game, my teacher advised me that I should create my own. So they coordinate with the others because these are licensed and, I was unsure whether I could get a license. So basically, they're the same. Number one is reduce hardships, and number one here is no poverty. Mine is no lack of food, and number two is zero hunger. So basically, they're the same, but I've created my own icons and my own wording. And on the back of these cards, like reduce hardships, I equated them with a job. So a person is behind moving that forward, or could be. I used the word job. It could also be goal. The goal is to provide money and help to developing countries to reduce hardships. When I did the game, well, I'll talk about that later, actually. So these are just some examples of some of so there's 64 of these different ones, one deck for each person. So this is just the process that I had to go through to produce that. We all do this as artists. We empathize, we define, we ideate, we prototype, we test, we implement. Basically, it's all the same. There was another framework, the natural step, which includes backcasting, whereas you look at what you want is the outcome. So my outcome was I wanted people to make some behavioral changes. And then I worked backwards. How could I get to that outcome of making behavioral changes? So that was my process for this game development. This was the actual steps. So I did research. I defined my decisions of what I was going to focus on. I actually made like 7 or 8 different prototypes. So I made the decisions, I did the prototypes, and then a bunch of them I tested so I could move forward to come up with where I got to. My advisor, she was an expert in behavioral change, and she provided me with this COMBI behavioral change model. And when we looked at a game that would provide similar potential for training and practice, which was 5 out of the 6 behavioral points that are needed for behavioral change for the long term. The only thing that was missing was this physical opportunity, which was actually doing it, but everything else was included or could be included if you play the game. Okay, this is the first game that I made. And this was on the Miro board. It was developed from this grade 3, I believe, textbook, science textbook. And then I was also doing this Ducky Insights. It was a tracking app, beta testing from Oslo. And I did that for about 6 months. And I have here that it wasn't any fun. So part of also I found out was for behavioral change, or to learn, it needs to be fun. So I really moved on from this idea. So that was one point. So it had to be fun. This was, I wanted to, so I used the actual, the idea was to use actual carbon. So we have carbon that are all stacked up together, and then we remove carbon or we add carbon. A lot of it was data driven. But what came out of this was I knew I wanted to have some visual carbon entity in the game. And so it transferred into this carbon scorecard. This was prototype 3. I kind of thought that, people really don't even know the basics. But so it was like, what is sustainability? It was a video. What is sustainability? What creates carbon, those kind of basics. What are greenhouse gases? And so I made this video, I prototyped it. It was more like a test. And so to me, the fun factor really wasn't there. There wasn't a lot of interaction. So I moved on from that. And then this was a trivia kind of idea. So I made up these cards. And what this developed into was the community cards. So that was an important part of the process to go through because it formed the community. This was the first of the MVPs, which I also tested. And here it had mentor cards instead of the sustainable development cards. And with this, what I found was in the play of it, the people did not even pay any attention to it. So I wanted to make it more at the forefront, and so I changed how it would be played, and I changed the actual cards themselves. When I did a survey. So I had 5 families on and off playing the games, and I had one board game group of adults that also played it. Some would play, some refused to play. Some would do the questionnaires that I provided. Others would not even touch the questionnaire. But 1 out of 14 people that I asked were unaware of the Sustainable Development Goals. 12 out of 13 participants felt they would need to make changes to live a sustainable lifestyle. And then afterwards, 10 out of 13 participants felt they still might need more knowledge to live a sustainable lifestyle, but 10 out of 13 also thought that they already knew a lot. And then my final things were 8 out of 9 people felt positive points would translate into everyday behavioral changes, and that the negative points would transfer into lower carbon lifestyle behaviors. So they understood the positive, negative. It was a very easy kind of thought process to go through. So to me, it felt successful. 1 out of 4 people thought that they would implement something right away from the first gameplay. But what I found, which really surprised me, was I thought the kids were be real gung-ho with like learning and wanting to make changes and everything, but it wasn't that way at all. That both there was, you need to have an open mind that it didn't matter what your age was, you needed to have an open mind to make changes. So then I took it to Kickstarter. I just wanted to talk a minute about this. This was kind of how I presented it. But what I found out was that basically you need to go to this launch boom first and do a year worth of advertising and create a following before Kickstarter actually works. And this is kind of what I had presented. And a lot of game developers put it on Tabletop Simulator. So they load it on here, and then It's free for people to play and to try it out. And if anybody in the group is interested in helping me do this, I'd be much appreciated. If anybody's really good with computers or whatever, and they would like to work with me to get this on Tabletop Simulator to move it forward, that'd be really cool. I'll post this and you can, contact me. Um, and then I wanted to add these pieces. So this is my artwork now. Um, I've kind of made a thing that I'm only going to use natural materials or discarded materials. Um, yeah, I might, that I really care about using materials that actually can be composted. So from now on, that's the kind of thing that I want to use. I want to use discarded materials. I've been using a lot of like banana peels are or fruit peels are really interesting when they're dried and they create these great little sculptures. And didn't, lots of the famous architects and people use, natural materials to get their ideas from. And that's kind of where I'm at, that um, I don't want to use plastic. I don't want to use, like, even though it's discarded, I might change my mind in the end, but I want to strictly focus on something that can be buried and nourish the earth. So I'm using a lot of sticks and branches and dried things, and that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Uh, I was thinking about how much time did it take you to make the game?
About a year and a half, but
A
that was
year?
like during my courses. So and also like you can see how it was kind of directed. So it was a year and a half during my courses and then a few months at the beginning, like in January, like 3 months to design the board and do the, actual do the artwork for the cards. And kind of focus in. And each time I do it, it gets a little bit better. But I found that that is kind of a short-term thing for a board game. A lot of people um, take a lot longer. I, in the rule book, it kind of has where I got all the information from. So there was, over the course, I was reading a bunch of different books and I was coming up with all these ideas about different things that I would like to say um, or like to kind of promote in the game.
Yeah, that was actually really quick when you say that. The development, I respect that so much. Um, yeah, I have the mic on. Sorry, I was thinking that I was just talking alone. But that was kind of impressive. It is an amazing process, really quickly, and well, I hope we can play it one day.
Oh, thank you. I hope so too.
Thank you so much.
I was kind of curious about like your end slide where it was showing your personal artwork and you have like it's like a frame. Is that like a mushroom in it or what was that?
Well, it is. So
Oh,
in my first class, we had to do a life cycle of something. And so I was making kombucha. And so that's the mother, which is called pellicle. And so it is bacteria and sugar and water that it grows. And then I incorporated, the top one had human hair and the bottom one had dog hair in it. And then I used recycled wood. So somebody threw out a baby's crib and it had drawings on it. And so I took the slats and made it into a frame and framed. And so basically the pellicle, it grew from yeast and bacteria. I added the hair and then I dried it. And then I put it in the frame. So they're called outside the box 1 and 2. So I've shown that in 3 different galleries, but nobody's bought them yet. So, but it's a kind of an interesting thing. I did find out that in New York, there's a an art program that does that, works with uh, that process with artists to make things. But I only read about that after I made it. And um, so that, like, to me, we talked a bit about regenerative art. So that's kind of when you can also use like root systems. So a lot of people are growing like beans in particular, beans like sprouts, bean sprouts, right? So you can grow bean sprouts and use in a like controlled environment, and then they can make a pattern. Those sprouts, the roots make a pattern. You cut off the top and you can dry the root system, and people are making, well, I would make art, but people are making like clothing or like lace or, like for clothing and stuff like that with the root system. So it's called regenerative. I think it's regenerative. So we also talked in our program about, like recycling and all those kind of things, but, we don't like the next step is regeneration, which is, actually making it, producing the building blocks. But there's sugar. So I also had to think about that. So if I was going to move forward, I would have to, also look at local materials. So, sugar comes across the world. To me, we don't grow sugar here. Or would I grow my own sugar cane? Yes, I could. But I could maybe use maple syrup, which is natural to my environment here, as the food source to grow that product, which is the pellicle. But it's just interesting. I don't know, because like we think about all these different things, right? Like materials in like my undergraduate, we talked about materials. We talked about their history and their meaning, but did we actually, like, this has a better meaning to me now for the future? I think there needs to be more talk about that. We don't, like, do we need to have things that last 50, 100 years when nobody cares about it in 50 or 100 years?
Thank you, Virginia.
Mhm.
I think that's also such an interesting thing as well, because I've also been experimenting with paper making and using native plants. And so that's why I love your art examples at the end as well. And I also wanted to comment on something that you mentioned previously with the game design of how, you have these different points and how thoughtful you were, like, let me not use black ink because of the carbon, which makes sense. But also, how this is something that could be instilled in children from a very young age. Because how do we produce change? How do we change this society that we live in that doesn't really care about plastics and, not using materials in this way? It's like, yes, it's the younger generation. So I think something like that would be great to even partner with like local schools or international schools as well. And I don't know, I think it'd be great to have kids interact with it and even have them develop their own games, right? Using that as a model and have a project. I don't know. I have so many ideas, but thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think Virginia, this is a great example of taking the the objective of there's this knowledge that that people aren't aware of. Uh, and that, yes, it's in the news and people talk about, these issues all the time, but they don't have the background knowledge to really understand and make decisions and so on. And so people go, oh, well, I know I should be using less plastic, or I should be, carrying my own shopping bag, or this or that. But the sort of deeper knowledge behind that, and connecting it to things like the UN reports and initiatives and so on. I think that's really quite crucial. And this is a really great example of how one can sort of start that process. Um, and as Giselle was saying, it's going to happen with the younger people, but how do we sustain that? We sustain that by convincing the parents. And so having a board game where the kids and the parents play together, they're both learning together, and then they come uh, to make agreements about how to make change, and they can support each other, because it's very difficult for individuals to sustain the change. But if you have a family group that they sort of poke each other and say, hey, wait a minute, why are you doing that? Why are you deciding to buy that or not? We should change this. I think that's a great strategy that has, really good potential. The challenge, I think, for you now that you've expressed and you touched on a bit in your talk is, how do you actually get this out there? And how do you I guess, get it out into the world where people will be using it? I mean, I think it has incredible potential. Um, so maybe this group is a way to support you in that, and your call out to help uh, put it online as a sort of a digital prototype um, is one approach. The other is that for people to sort of keep in touch with what you're doing, and how you're then going to be sort of, I guess, fundraising for it, and developing that.
Yeah, well, and then after the fundraising, well, people have to buy it. I mean, people have to want it and use it, and, like all those things. But if the fundraising goes on, then it could basically be free and sent out to all the schools, it's
Mhm.
to your neighborhood schools or whatever, right? So that's a potential. But if it's online, anybody in any country could use it if it's a viable. I don't even know if like that simulator is a viable thing for online. So if anybody's really good at computers and that kind of thing, programming, or has used that Steam something, um, then, get in touch with me. I've left my stuff on the Miro board, my contact
Mhm.
information. So